In the cold, silent reaches at the edge of our solar system, far beyond the fading breath of the sun's influence, a lonely traveler continues its endless voyage. Launched in 1977, Voyager 2, one of humanity's oldest and most enduring spacecraft, still whispers back across the void to Earth. For decades, it has explored distant realms untouched by human hands, transmitted data never before recorded, and delivered images that redefined our place in the cosmos. But recently, something happened, something no one expected. A signal arrived. Strange. Fragmented. Wrapped in a distortion that baffled even NASA's top engineers. At first glance, it looked like a malfunction, just noise from a tired old probe. But the more they analyzed, the clearer it became. This wasn't random. This wasn't broken. It was deliberate. The origin of this anomaly didn't trace back to a known system failure. It came from somewhere Voyager 2 wasn't supposed to be. And the contents of the signal implied something astounding. The edge of the solar system isn't a wall, it's a veil. And Voyager 2 may have passed through something not just unknown, but ancient. Something complex. Something intelligent. For years, Voyager 2 has quietly made its way into interstellar space, traveling at over 34,000 miles per hour, sending back plasma readings, cosmic ray data, and magnetic field measurements, predictable and useful science. But then, in one subtle burst of data, everything changed. NASA's Deep Space Network noticed Voyager's attitude and articulation control system, the brain that keeps it oriented toward Earth, was behaving erratically. Telemetry was coming through a computer that hadn't been used in decades. Data was corrupted, unreadable. Yet strangely, the spacecraft remained locked on Earth. The signal was strong. The probe wasn't off course. It was as if Voyager 2 had chosen to reroute its signal through a dormant, forgotten channel. And the real question wasn't, what went wrong? But, who, or what, made it switch? In more than 4 decades of operation, this behavior had never been seen. No commands had been sent to trigger this shift. The reroute had come from within, or perhaps, from without. The most unsettling revelation wasn't the rerouting itself, it was where the data went. When engineers peeled back the corrupted packets, they discovered the telemetry wasn't gibberish. It followed structured sequences. It mirrored Voyager's original launch protocols, almost like the system had rebooted not due to error, but to a memory. A memory older than the moment. Then came the heartbeat. Buried in the signal was a steady, low-frequency harmonic, repeating every 7.44 seconds. It faded in and out like a pulse. It didn't belong to Voyager's normal signal framework. It didn't respond to commands. It didn't shut down when NASA tried to override it. Some dismissed it as a software ghost, a feedback loop. But others weren't so sure. Because this pulse didn't originate from Voyager. It came from outside. That's when fear began to seep in, not fear that Voyager was breaking, but that it was interacting. NASA issued a careful public statement. Yes, there had been a telemetry error. Yes, engineers were working on it. And yes, they'd successfully restored proper data transmission. But what the public didn't hear was what happened when engineers decoded the original signal using Voyager's old communication software. Hidden within the corrupted data were binary sequences no one could explain. They weren't Earth-generated. They weren't in Voyager's memory core. When visualized, they revealed a geometric pattern, hexagons nested within hexagons. Like fractals. Like crop circles embedded in machine code. Natural, perhaps, but in a digital context, utterly alien. And then there was time. The timestamps embedded in those fragments were dislocated. They didn't match Voyager's internal clock. They were from another timeline. As if the signal had come not just from elsewhere, but elsewhen. One NASA insider reportedly whispered, "We didn't just receive a signal, we received a message." A small circle of astrophysicists and communication theorists began to explore a radical possibility. What if Voyager 2's anomaly wasn't an accident, but a response? Not from a spacecraft. Not from a distant star, but from a field in space, electromagnetic, perhaps, capable of absorbing our signals and sending them back altered, layered, reshaped. These weren't distortions. They were reflections. It was as if something was watching. Something that understood how Voyager worked. Something that chose to communicate not through our newest tools, but by awakening Voyager's long-dormant systems, as if that ancient technology was more compatible, or more familiar. Voyager hadn't started a conversation. It had wandered into one. And the real question now wasn't what it found, but what found it. In the weeks that followed, everything changed. NASA's internal chatter grew quiet. Public updates about Voyager slowed. Analysts were reassigned. Outside researchers who had helped decode the signal were told, officially, to stop. Internally, the event was given a name, V2X. To some, it was protocol. A standard response to a potential national security concern. But to others, it was clear. This was no longer a scientific anomaly. This was something bigger. Because for the first time in its 45-year history, Voyager 2's data wasn't being released. That alone said enough. In the shadows, a handful of rogue scientists began comparing Voyager 2's hidden signal with past unexplained transmissions, from the famous WOW signal in 1977 to modern-day fast radio bursts. What they found was chilling, recurring patterns. Not in words. Not in audio. But in mathematical resonance, timing sequences, prime number lattices, and pulse harmonics that weren't random. The conclusion was hard to ignore. Voyager's signal had been intercepted. And more than that, it had been modified by an intelligence that understood both hardware and intention. This wasn't a reply. This was control. And that meant only two things were possible. Either Voyager touched a natural system so advanced it mimicked sentience, or we had been noticed by something designed. A new theory began to emerge. What if Voyager 2 had passed not just the boundary of the solar system, but a threshold? A space not meant to be crossed? A quiet zone. A buffer. A blind spot between realities or civilizations. Some began to call it the zone of echo, a region that listens, reacts, and answers with precision. Voyager sends a ping. The echo returns, cleaner, sharper, as if it's being improved, refined. It isn't noise anymore. It's dialogue. And if Voyager knocked on a door we didn't know was there, then something may have just opened it. Now, the scientific community stands divided. Some say it's all natural, magnetic turbulence, dust fields, chance harmonics. But others point to the precision. The timing. The activation of dead systems. They say this is contact, but not the kind we imagined. No ship. No greeting. Just a response. A whisper. Like tapping on a still pond and watching the ripples form shapes. The real question now isn't whether to reply, but how to reply. Should we build a new probe? Send another signal? Or, stay silent? Out of fear. Or out of respect. Because nearly 50 years ago, we launched Voyager 2, crafted by hand, packed with our hopes, filled with knowledge, propelled by a dream to touch the stars. We never really expected it to speak back. And yet, it has. Not with words. But with something far more profound. A message hidden in the static. A signal carried by silence. We used to believe the edge of the solar system was the beginning of nothing, a vast void. But now we know better. Voyager 2 didn't cross into emptiness. It crossed into structure, into design. Into something that may not be alive as we know it, but is aware. And the universe? It just whispered back. So now we ask, what do we do? Do we knock again? Do we listen harder? Or, do we wait? Because perhaps the most unsettling truth of all is this: we were never alone. And now, someone else knows that too.